Hello everyone and welcome to Callsign Charlie Models. It is time for another inbox review, and today we have another monster sized box here. That's why you guys get to see my ugly face at the very beginning of this video. Surprised it hasn't broken the camera yet. But with the inbox review that we have today, we have another Trumpeter kit in 1/32 scale. The 1/32 F-117A Nighthawk right here. This kit, absolutely gorgeous. I have built a couple of them in the past. One of them I sold off, and then the other one is actually down in the River Rats Museum down in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So that one was actually built for one of the pilots that flew this on the second night of the Gulf War, and I actually got to talk to him and got to hear stories about his missions and everything and the training that they went through. So that was a really cool aspect about that build, and I did get a couple coins from him and the museum after the build was complete. So I'm going to get the camera turned around and everything set up so we can start looking at the box and then all the contents of this kit. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, and I'm back, and we're starting off with the top box. We have a total length of 536.5 millimeters, which is about 21 1/16 of an inch for total length, and then a wingspan of 412.5 millimeters, which is about 16.5 inches roughly. So it's going to be a decent sized model. It's not the largest 1/32 fighter aircraft or bomber aircraft, strike aircraft, whatever you want to call it, but it is a very large model. And going off by the top of the box art, we have some gorgeous box art, again by Trumpeter, of the F-117 flying over one of the deserts and a crater over here. And then we go off to one of the sides right here, and we have one of the variants that we can do with that, and then we have a nice little history about the F-117 right here. And then we flip it over to the other side, and we just have the top profile of the F-117 right here. This box, like I said, is so large. I have the camera all the way up on my mount and zoomed all the way out, and the box is only, let's see, about 1 3/4 inches away from my camera, and my camera is to the lens 20 inches from the base. So that gives you an idea of how big this box actually is. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get everything set off to the side, and then we can start going through all the plastic, or the instructions, the decals, and all the plastic. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so I finally got the box off. Typical of Trumpeter kits in 1/32 scale at least. Their boxes are very, very tight fit, so it does take a little bit to get it off. And then you look at the box, we have the top fuselage right here, and then we have some other components going on, and it is very nicely protected in this kit. So let me get everything pulled off and out to the side, like I said earlier, and we'll start going through all the instructions and everything. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Alright, so starting off with the instructions, we have kit number 03219 right here, and the typical Trumpeter layout for our instructions in a black and white landscape booklet with very nice instructions. We also have the legend of symbols that we're going to be using throughout the build also. So opening it up again, like the standard Trumpeter instructions, we start off with the parts callouts here, which they are numbered and they are fairly legible. If you're hard of sight, you might want to get your Optivisor or readers out, but you can read the numbers on all the parts right here. Alright, and then now we're starting off with the kit, starting off with our cockpit, getting our ejection seat and the cockpit along with some side panels in there. And then we have our nose landing gear going on with our nose landing gear strut as well. Does look like just plastic landing gear. It doesn't look like there's metal involved in this. And then we are moving on to our bomb bay, adding in all the attributes to go on the bomb bay with this. I'm not sure if you can have, I can't remember if you can have this in the stowed or extended position. I'm pretty sure it's only in the extended version for this, unless you leave it out or do some scratch building to get it to be in the folded position. Alright, then after that we are working on our main landing gear, getting our main landing gear struts and our wheels on. It looks like we're going to have rubber wheels for this kit. And then we also have a few holes to make for this as well in the upper fuselage. After that we are working on our engines, getting intake fans done on that, and then moving right along to our exhaust section right here, which unless you're opening up panels and such, you are not going to be able to see any of this. Even the intakes, you can't see any of them because of the grills and everything that go on the intakes. So you can paint it up, but you don't have to worry about seam lines or ejection pin marks or anything like that on these intakes or the exhaust. Also, the exhausts are very narrow, and they also have the what's it called, the diverters, the heat diffusion pieces that are in there, so you definitely cannot see back into here either. Alright, so after that we have our refueling probe. You have the option of having that in the open or closed position with that, and then we're just adding that in right there. If you're going to do it in the closed position, you have the doors closed right there. Something that would be really cool is if somebody did a 1/32 tail section of a KC-135, so you could do an inflate one of these refueling at night. I think that would be something that would be really, really cool. That would probably be the only way that I would hang a model from a ceiling, is if I had a 1/32 tail section of a F-135 to put on there. Alright, so up next we are working on that front sensor right up here that's getting put on, and a piece of glass that goes on here as well. Now, when I was talking to my F-117 pilot friend that flew during the Gulf War, he said that this part wasn't actually glass. It was very fine mesh that went in front of the screen, or this sensor right here, and they had many problems during Desert Storm of sand getting in there and clogging the mesh and causing issues for this sensor right here. So one thing I do is I do have some very fine mesh that I paint in gold, and then put that on there to be realistic for that. So but that is one little mistake that came with the kit. But then again, in order to see this detail, you would be able to see glass. You would have to have glass, because with the mesh you really can't see it. And then we're adding in a couple of doors on top of our intakes right here, and then also our cockpit right here. After that we're adding in our intakes and our exhaust, getting that all in. And then we're adding in our bomb bay, and then another sensor that goes on the belly of the aircraft with the glass work that goes on that sensor as well. And then our navigation lights as well included. Alright, then up next we are adding in our main landing gear and our nose landing gear to the bottom fuselage. And then we're going to get our fuselage halves together. Now this, I do remember there was a fit issue. There was a seam, a rather large seam between the fit on the bottom right here. It was probably about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters thick on the bottom, but it wasn't much of an issue to take care of because it is on the bottom and it is on a flat space, so it is relatively easy to sand out and take care of. And then also we are getting our a HUD attached to this as well, along with our flaps. We can have our flaps positioned on this one as well. Alright, and then up next we have our main canopy. We have the option of having this in the open or closed position right here, and we do have some interior detail to go on the inside of the canopy as well. After that's all done, we are just adding in the grates for our intakes, and then a couple other pieces that go around that front sensor I was talking about earlier, and then a few antennas and all that. Now if you're going to have it in stealth mode, these antennas and everything would be lowered. These would only be up on the ground or in the very beginning stages of flight. Other than that, they would all be sucked down into the fuselage for stealth mode on that. Alright, and then after that we are working on our vertical stabilizers right here, and then we have a couple other pieces to go on right there. So another thing that my F-117 friend told me about with the F-117 is it is not supposed to fly. Aerodynamically and everything, it is not supposed to fly. And with it being fly-by-wire, he would say that when they're going alongside to refuel, he'd be watching his wingman and you would see all the control surfaces just moving all over the place just to keep that aircraft steady and stable flight. So I thought that was something that was really cool to hear about. And then also with these vertical stabilizers, they are positionable as well. So you can have them, if you do your research, you can see how they have them when they are parked on the flight deck as well. Alright, in our last couple of steps, we are adding in our bomb bays along with our actuators right here. And then we're just adding in our landing gear doors for that. So, and then finally, we are adding in our GBUs. Again, the GBUs were not used in Desert Storm. There was another GBU, GBU 16, I believe, I think, or GBU 24, one of the two. Those were used for Desert Storm. So if you want to add for or be historically accurate for Desert Storm, look into which bombs they used. Alright, so up next we have our color callouts. Of course, this is all going to be in black. The color callouts are in Vallejo, Model Master, Tamiya, and Humbrol right here. So again, all over black, but if you do your pre-shading and everything, you can really make this look good on how to paint black aircraft so it doesn't look just straight black. When they were first in the field in Desert Storm, they were pretty much all black. They were freshly painted and everything, and even so on, they did really meticulous care on making sure that the paint was all fresh throughout the Gulf War. So definitely, if you're doing a Gulf War one, it's going to be nice and black. Now if you're doing one from Bosnia, those are when they started to get fairly weathered, and actually they are using F-117s now for red flag and some of the other trainings as aggressors for the aggressor squadron for stealth capabilities on that. So again, you have a myriad of options that you can do for weathering, from all the way from silky smooth, nice and clean, all that, to really dirty and beat up and on that. So again, you have a myriad of weathering options for this aircraft. And then going on to the decals right here, we just have the black sheep, and that's the only option that we have for this. Now there are aftermarket decals out for this. If you go to HAD Decals, Hungarian Aero Decals on eBay, he does have a lot of great sheets for the F-117 to go for Desert Storm, Bosnia. Nobody's done the aggressor squadrons for red flag yet, so hopefully somebody will do that in the near future. Alright, so up next we have our decal sheet right here, and the decals, typical of Trumpeter, are very nice decals. Nice and thin, they go down really well for the most part. I have had some issues with Trumpeter decals, but not many issues. Then we have decals for our cockpit. Again, they look okay. I wish they would give you the option of having the powered on or powered off version with the screens blacked out, because if you're going to have it sitting on the flight deck with the canopy up and all that stuff, all of that's going to be powered down. It's really not going to have power to anything unless you have the pilots in or some ground crew doing some maintenance checks. But I digress and go forward with all the other decals. Decals do look nice and white. There's not much to this one. So we do have actually 3 decal options. We have the Flying Knights, the Screaming Demons, and the Black Sheep. I did not see any difference between them. I guess this is the only real difference maybe, and then these right here. So you'll have to do some research on which ones go to where. Alright, so first up we have our canopy piece right here. It is nice and clear. I do have a couple scratches in the kit right here, if you can see it. I'm not sure on if that's interior, or it kind of looks like it's an interior crack, so we'll have to see possibly about getting it polished out or getting the aftermarket one that has the iridium coating over the top of it. So again, for straight out of the box, this does look pretty nice. There are some scuffs and everything to it, which is odd because it does come nicely wrapped in plastic. So again, I don't know about all these scratches. Also, if you can get a mask set for this, you're definitely going to want to get a mask set because of all these jagged angles and shark teeth right along here. Will be an absolute nightmare to mask on your own. If you do, I would say you're a glutton for punishment on that. Okay, we also have a photo etch fret. There's only two pieces. These are our grills for our intakes right here. They are very nice. They are drilled out. And they are fairly thick, so you won't have the issue of them bending. That's the one problem with the Edward grills for this, was they were super thin and they bent super easy. So that was one major issue I had with the Edward stuff on this kit. But for this one, I am pretty sure that I'm going to be using these grills instead, because I don't want it to bend up like I had the issue with the Edward ones. Then up next we just have our rubber tires, standard. A little bit of tread work to it. No sidewall detail on that either. So again, they should look okay. But as you know, I am not a fan of rubber tires, so I'll probably be getting the Edward Braslin tires for this kit. Alright, up next we have our intakes from the outside. Looks very nice, nice and smooth, and then on the inside, absolutely perfect. There are no ejector pin marks on this at all, which is sad because these intakes are absolutely gorgeous, and the way that they have it, where you join these up, all the seam lines are actually in the corners, so you don't have to worry about even taking care of seam lines. The sad part about this is you are not going to be able to see any of this when it's all in the model. So that is one downside to this. Beautiful intake work that you will not be able to see. Alright, so up next we have our cockpit side panels right here. The detail on those are pretty nice with that. So let's see if the camera will focus on that. There we go. Pretty nice on that for the detail on there. And then we have the seat rails for our ejection rails for our ejection seat. The underside of the cockpit tub, which will flip around here in a second, and then the instrument panel actually does look very nice on that. And we have the decals that are going to go in all the MFDs as well. And then going on, we have a couple of more plastic pieces. This is that jagged edge that's going to go around the front sensor, and then more of those. Be very careful with these because these like to go ping off into oblivion. I have lost a couple of them before and had to scratch build them. And then our HUD going on the back end of our cockpit, again, pretty good detail on that, and we have the start of some cable details, so just need to drill those holes out and then add some lead wire in there and you'll be perfectly set. Then we have some more molded in detail on that, and then everything else on here looks pretty good so far. We're going to flip it over for our interior cockpit or canopy right here. No actual detail to it, so if you want to add and do some research and see about any additional detail that's on the inside of that, you can take care of that. And then everything else is looking pretty good. Our cockpit tub, so for the side consoles, those look alright. The switches and knobs do look a little bit generic, but once you paint them up and everything, those will look pretty nice. Alright, so up next we have our wheel hubs and all of that going on. Those do look pretty nice on there. And then our brackets for our sensors going on, a bunch of other little details for like our bomb bay, our landing gear, all throughout there. Then our landing gear doors, and then more landing gear parts right here. So they are hollowed out, so if you want to, you can add some metal cores to them to help improve the strength of these. Then we flip these over for the landing gear doors and some of the other landing gear. These aft landing gear doors are absolutely perfect with no ejector pin marks on those. And then for our main landing gear, again, no ejector pin marks on that. And also you just have all the ejector pins to cut off right along here and then sand those down. But everything else on here looks pretty nice for. Alright, so moving on, we have our exhaust area right here. Again, you're not going to be able to see any of this, so it's there, but again, we flip it over to the other side. All the holes that were on this side, you can kind of see it through the plastic, but again, it's not really a big issue because you cannot see this area at all when the model is all built up. So no worries about any of those. Alright, and then up next we have our control surfaces right here. All the flaps and ailerons and all that. We have our landing gear door right here, which we'll flip around and see here in a second, but there's no actual detail to this. So this was before Trumpeter went on their rivet craze, adding rivets to everything like the F-35. So they did do a very nice job with the molding on this model. And then you can see the front landing gear door. This is the only one that you're going to see the opposite side from, and you can see all that gorgeous detail that's into this landing gear door with the cable detail right here and then everything else going on. Absolutely gorgeous, and it fits perfectly as well. Alright, so now we have a clear sprue that has all of our like sensor glass right here. As you can see, all of those going on. Not much to them, and our navigation lights as well. So up next we have a double sprue right here, and this is our bomb bay stuff and our engine stuff as well. So we have some cabling and everything going on there. We have the arms for our bomb release mechanism, and then also some more arms for our bomb release mechanism, and then the actuators for our bomb bay doors right there. And as you can see, the engines, again, engines look very nice, but again, you're not going to be able to see any of it. And then we have some more detail for our bomb bay right there, and some more engine detail going on. Now the sway braces for the bomb ejection unit, they do look a little bit generic, but you're not really going to be able to see much of it because it does tuck into that piece as well. So as you can see, we have all those other pieces that are going on to the engine. We have our exhaust fan right here. Again, no detail to it, but you can't see it at all from inside the aircraft. Alright, and then up next we have a generic weapon sprue from Trumpeter. And the only ones that you're going to be using are the GBUs right here. And then we have our fins and everything going on. And the fins are nice and thin, razor edge on the leading edge on these fins. So very nicely done on the fins on that. And even on the molded part right here, again, they are nice and razor thin for the bomb fins on that. Alright, and up next we have our ejection seat. Let's get this flipped around. Where are you? Right there. Alright, so the ejection seat looks okay. A little bit generic on the seatbelt molding right there, so definitely going to be shaving that off and putting in some new seatbelts. And then we have our option for our grill for our intakes right here. If you don't want to use the grill, you can use those instead, which in my opinion, I don't know why you would. But again, and then we have all the interior framing and everything. A couple of, this is our parachute door right here, and then a couple other parts to the fuselage right there. Our refueling probe bay does have a couple of ejector pin marks on there, but I think that's going to get covered up anyways if even you are using the refueling probe, as you can see. And then we have our landing gear doors here right for our back end, and again, absolutely perfect on that. No ejector pin marks. Even in this little bulb right here, there's no ejector pin marks on that. And then we have the heat diffusers for the exhaust area as well on that. And like I said, because of these, you cannot see up into the exhaust area. So once you get to this point, there's nothing visible past that. Alright, up next we have our Bombay sprue, and this right here is the center wall, and we have some nice cable detail molded into that. And then our Bombay doors, again, absolutely gorgeous. No ejector pin marks or anything on there to really have to worry about on any of these parts as well. So just going on, because all the ejector pin marks are on the back side of these right here. And then you have one of the forward bulkhead. This is the forward bulkhead, and you have your air brake for your bombs coming down right here. They are a little bit thick, so you could replace them with the photo etch ones if you want, or use these. They still come out perfectly fine. Alright, when we flip it over to the other side of the Bombay, we have the ceiling to our Bombay right here. Some very nice detail. You can't see any of it because you have the bomb release mechanisms going on and top of everything. So really the only way that you can see any of this detail is if you leave the bombs off. Right there. So all the other detail on here, again, looks very nice. No ejector pin marks on anything that you're going to be able to see. Even on these Bombay doors, with the amount of detail that was on the inside, the actual Bombay doors for the body side are nice and smooth. But if you are having them open, you cannot see these panels anyways. Alright, so moving on to the top fuselage. Again, we don't have any rivets or anything like that. So this is definitely before Trumpeter decided to add rivets to every little thing that they did, which thank God, because this aircraft, the tooling on this is absolutely gorgeous. We do have a couple of like little ejector pin marks right there to cut off and sand down, but those aren't very bad at all, especially for all the angles that are going on with this. Absolutely gorgeous detail. And then on the instrument combing right here, we have another one. Then we have a nice little protector for these pitot tubes going on right there. So very nicely done on the molding. Even on the exhaust area right here, we have some nice little bumps going on and everything. We do have another ejector pin mark right on the parachute door right there. We flip it over, you're not going to be able to see any of it, but again, we have some nice mounting areas for the framing for our engine right here, and then for our cockpit right there. So again, no real issues with the inside or even the outside, just some minor ejector pins to take care of on that, which they're nice and raised, so you can cut them off, sand them down real quick, and then you're all good to go. Alright, and then for the underside, we do have a few panel lines and all of that going on with the sensors. We also have a couple grills right here. Let me get you zoomed in a little bit more so you can see that detail. But yeah, everything is looking very nice on this right here. Now, like I was saying earlier, there is a little bit of a fit issue between the upper and lower fuselage. Let me get this put together, and like you can see how easily it fits together. You do have this little bit of a seam line right there, as you see, going along the whole length of the fuselage. But with that being said, this is on a nice flat area, so it is very easy to putty and sand down. So no real issues with that. It just takes a little bit of extra work. And also, it's not really, you just have this one panel line going down the side, and it's one long straight panel line. So it's probably one of the easiest panel lines you'll ever have to rescribe, if you have to rescribe it at all. So again, that is really the only issue with this entire kit, is that little fit issue right there. I mean, if that's all I have to deal with on a kit this size, I am very happy to deal with that. I mean, as you can see right here, you do have maybe a little bit of a seam line to deal with on that, just to get that sand down right there. But again, compared to anything else and how flat and everything is on this kit, it's going to be super easy to take care of on this. Alright, so that does it for the Trumpeter 132nd F-117, and it's a simple kit. Don't get me wrong, it's a very simple kit. There's not a whole parts count to it. There's only a little over 290 pieces to this kit. So there's not a lot to it. But with everything in it, which is sad because you're not going to be able to see any of the interior details minus the cockpit if you leave the cockpit open. If you're going to close the cockpit, you really cannot see anything inside of there. But anyways, this kit, really some of the best tooling I've seen from Trumpeter in a long time. The fact that they left all the rivets out is a major bonus, because if you've seen my F-35 review of the Trumpeter F-35, they just littered rivets all over that thing, which made absolutely no sense on that kit. But on this one, they went ahead and they didn't put any rivets on it, so thank God for that. This kit, like I said, it builds up very nicely, very easily. When I had issues with it, they were self-induced issues, because I did add the aftermarket Aries cockpit and a few other things. And really the cockpit area was the only thing I had any issues with, and that was because the bottom block I didn't sand off enough. But with that being said, this kit straight out of the box looks absolutely amazing. This kit with a little bit of aftermarket looks absolutely amazing. I'm really looking forward to building this one again. So anyways, that's going to do it for this inbox review. I hope that you enjoyed this, and also I hope if you're on the fence about getting this kit, I hope this helped you make your decision. But anyways, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you've built this one before, comment down below. Or if you decided to get this kit because of this video, comment down below. But anyways, until next time, I hope you guys have a great day, stay frosty, and happy modeling.